Fox News confirming images of the Covenant school shooters' manifesto that were leaked to the public are in fact authentic.
The 3 leaked pages showed the shooter, who murdered 3 children and 3 adults in Nashville in March, expressing rage at white privileged kids, writing in part, quote, "Want to kill all you little crackers, bunch of little blanks with your white privileges. Can't believe I'm doing this, but I'm ready. I hope my victims aren't. I hope I have a high death count."
Now, the national media largely ignoring the story with 0 minutes of coverage in morning shows on CNN, MSNBC, ABC, CBS, and NBC.
Joining us now with reaction, the Dana Show radio host, Dana Loesch. Dana, always great to see you. Lawsuits were filed by the National Police Association, the Tennessee Firearms Association, calling for the public release of these writings left behind this trans murderer, and they were instead leaked. Why has the public not seen this? Why were they hiding it? Now they're all outraged that these pages were leaked.
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Is why it took a year to get 3 pages, why it's taken this long to get 3 pages. I mean, they should have released this from the very beginning, because honestly, this is kind of what we all suspected, number one. But number two, I think part of the reason, to answer your question as to why they didn't release it, I think because it destroyed 2 narratives. You had the narrative about trans terrorism with radical gender activism, but you also had the narrative about gun control. And everything that was said in the wake of this horrific tragedy, you would think that law enforcement, you would think that these agencies would be further compelled to release it. I mean, remember the Tennessee 3 that were invited to the White House and that disrupted proceedings in the state capitol and made this huge, they turned it into a civil rights stance on the backs of these victims. This was all due to what happened at this school. They were calling for gun control. They were calling for limiting all of our rights based upon assumptions that they were making. And you know, when you don't have a motive, when you don't have a clearly written manifesto as this murderer left behind, I mean, then everyone can fill in the blanks and then they can push whatever agenda they want to push. Now they're all mad because they have to talk about it because pages were released. And I have to add, I did see where the mayor had said that they need to investigate and see who leaked this and why it was leaked. I think they need to investigate why people were stonewalling being transparent with the public.
You know, I look at this and oftentimes if you're a Republican or a conservative-leaning shooter, this information flows out almost immediately. But because this shooter was talking about white privilege, and this would point you then to the media, the schools, the Democrat Party, all of a sudden, because it's their ideology that was used in the shooter's mind, all of a sudden they have to keep it under wraps so we can't see the viewpoint of the shooter.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, if there's a discussion of privilege to be had, let's talk about the privilege that this murderer has enjoyed. This murderer enjoyed the privilege of actually trying to get public sympathy on behalf of the movement that they claim to represent at the expense of victims. You know, some of the stuff, Dagan and Sean, as you were both recounting in the 3 pages of this, saying that these students were little crackers and that they had white privilege and all of this other stuff. I mean, this murderer had that privilege, and this murderer, while it was described that she hated everyone, she wanted to be a man, she hated everyone, she didn't target everyone. She targeted a Christian school, she targeted Christian families, and she targeted the most vulnerable amongst them, the children. And then afterwards, there was actually a pastor in the community that compared her to Jesus. There were people who came out and said, we need to really patrol the Christian community and make sure that nothing happens to these activists in the trans community. That is privilege if we're going to discuss privilege. None of the families were invited to the White House. That's privilege. That's the Tennessee 3 privilege. So I think it's interesting how she viewed herself as the victim, this monster, when she was the boogeyman in everybody's nightmare. And the fact that it wasn't accurately reported like that, that's privilege.
Dana Loesch, thank you so much. And the big old media, nary a peep, won't touch it because it doesn't fit their narrative either.
Dana Loesch.
Dana Loesch, thank you so much.